Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada, on PRConnectionRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. On this show, we talk a lot about the Vegas Golden Knights, and, focusing on right now is fantastic. I get that. Focusing on the current day with the Vegas Golden Knights, a very successful franchise, I might add. But on tonight's episode of Vegas Hockey Hub, I want to take a look back. We are going to take a look back at every first round pick the Vegas Golden Knights have had in their franchise history. So dating back to 2017 and all the way until 2022, we will be talking about every first round pick, all 7 that have been taken in Vegas Golden Knights history. So it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about, but let's get into it. Let's focus on who we have right here, and that is, of course, the first draft class in Vegas Golden Knights history, 2017. So to the left is Erik Brannstrom. He was taken 15th overall. In the center is Cody Glass, who was taken 6th overall. And you had Nick Suzuki on the right, who was taken 13th overall. So let's focus on Cody Glass just to start out with this. Cody Glass, he came from the Portland Winterhawks of the Western Hockey League, and there was a good amount of expectations around Cody Glass. When Cody Glass was drafted by Vegas, there was this idea that he could potentially, a few years down the road, become a center of the future for the Vegas Golden Knights. That he was taken that high up because of the fact that he was supposed to be this good up-and-coming guy that would lead Vegas into the future. That was the idea. Well, people also initially, he was an A-plus prospect. If they did the grading system, he was an A-level prospect. He was also praised for his playmaking, his hockey sense, and his hand-eye coordination. That was something that he was very praised for. I also want to briefly mention that Cody Glass, he played for the Winnipeg Thrashers. He was with the Portland Winterhawks. He was even on Team Manitoba for the Canadian Winter Games. So this was a situation where you had Cody Glass, who had done a lot of good heading up into that point. He was quick skate. He was a quick skater. He was a mobile playmaker. He was somebody that could be a really good player at the NHL level someday. And his stats in Portland kind of back that up. He spent 4 years with the Portland Winterhawks. And during that time period, he went from only having 10 goals and 27 points in 2015 to having 37 goals and 102 points in 2018. So that's really just a dilemma there, is that Cody Glass went from year one, playing 65 games, 27 points. Year 2, 69 games, 94 points. Third year was the 102 I mentioned. And then in year 4, when he actually got a little bit of time in the AHL, he only played 38 games, but had 15 goals that year with Portland. I also want to mention that he got injured during the time with the Portland Winterhawks. As a matter of fact, late in the 2018-2019 era, he actually suffered an injury, and he was actually out for a decent amount of time because of him suffering an injury around that era. So his junior career did pretty well, him going 6th overall, but how did he do once he got to the AHL? How did he do once he got to the NHL? Well, in the AHL, he only played 6 games in 2018-2019, but had 5 points. So he registered nearly a point per game. They go to the Calder Cup playoffs that year in 2018-2019, and in all 22 games, he had 7 goals, 15 points in 22 games. Now, 2019 and 2020, I'm not going to really count because he only played 2 games that year for Chicago, but had 2 points. Whereas in 2020, 2021, he had 14 games played, 4 goals, 10 points. So it really felt like in the AHL, he showed the talent that was reason why he was taken 6th overall. Even when he played a full AHL season in 2021, 2022, 66 games, 62 points in the AHL in 2021, 2022. So I'm mentioning all the positives about Cody Glass. I have mentioned that he is a mobile playmaker. I mentioned his quick skating, his hockey sense, his hand-eye coordination. Look, Cody Glass, there was some good positives about him, and his AHL stats look good on the surface. But it's his NHL stats that where it starts to differ. His performance in the NHL has really left a lot to be desired. And obviously, his career is not over. He's not even 24 years old yet. But his stats in the NHL, it goes as followed. So he played 39 games in 2019-2020, his first season playing in the NHL for the Vegas Golden Knights. Only 5 goals, 12 points in, once again, 39 games. Not great for a rookie year. It's not terrible, but it wasn't great. It wasn't anything that would stand out to you as a year one for a 20-year-old. But you know what? Year two, 21 years old, he should do a lot better. Well, unfortunately, he didn't. In year two, he played 27 games, only 4 goals and 10 points as a 21-year-old for the Vegas Golden Knights. This actually just so happened to have been the last year he was with the Vegas Golden Knights, because after that season, after only having 22 points as a Vegas Golden Knight, they trade him to the Nashville Predators in a 3-way deal. Cody Glass goes to the Nashville Predators, Ryan Ellis goes to the Philadelphia Flyers, and Nolan Patrick comes to the Vegas Golden Knights. So the Vegas Golden Knights swapped 2nd overall and 6th overall picks in that deal. So how has Cody Glass done in Nashville? Has he done a little bit better than he did in Vegas? Well, statistically, he hasn't done that great either. So in 49 games as a Nashville Predator, 7 goals, 20 points, and he has a +6. So when you look at it from a perspective, he played 66 games for the Vegas Golden Knights, 22 points. He played 49 games for the Nashville Predators, 20 points. So Cody Glass is kind of hard to grade because, once again, in the AHL, he has done exceptionally well. In minor league hockey, he has done a good amount of opportunities there. Like I mentioned, he had a 66 game performance in the AHL. I mean, this was a guy that did pretty well in the Milwaukee Admirals in 2021, 2022. And you can't deny that he didn't have talent. He went 6th overall for a reason. But it's just very disappointing that Cody Glass, 6 years into his career as a professional hockey player, he just hasn't lived up to any of the hype. He hasn't lived up to anything that people thought he was going to be as a 6th overall pick. Now, this is me speaking now. I really hope that Cody Glass eventually does recover. He is on the top 6 in Nashville at times. He's been mainly on the bottom 6 in Vegas. Even when he was in a couple of games in Nashville last season, he was on the bottom line. So if Cody Glass eventually develops and becomes a middle 6 forward, I think that would be the best case scenario. But no, I don't think Cody Glass will ever become a top line center that a 6th overall pick was projected to be. But a middle 6 forward would be a best case scenario. Most likely, he's going to be a bottom 6 forward in Nashville and any other teams he plays in with his career. And hopefully, he does have a good long career in the NHL, because I did like Cody Glass. I thought that he would be a good player. I just hope that eventually he does turn it around, because I saw the talent that he had in Portland, and I just hope that one day it can turn itself around. But Cody Glass, just to recap real quick, his statistics in the NHL 5 years in: 115 games played, 16 goals, 42 points, a +5, and 26 penalty minutes. He has had no awards, no accolades, and he is currently on the bottom 6 for the Nashville Predators. So that was Cody Glass, okay? And I'm going to show you some pictures real quick. That was Cody Glass playing for the Chicago Wolves during the 2 years he was there. That was him playing for the Vegas Golden Knights, going up against the Philadelphia Flyers, the team that he was part of the three-way trade with. And now you see him with the Nashville Predators, where he is now. So that was Cody Glass. Well, the next player the Vegas Golden Knights took in that 2017 class is unforgivable. This is a guy who should have been a great player here in Vegas. This is a guy that could be a top-line center today on the Vegas Golden Knights if everything had gone accordingly. In fact, I believe that an alternate reality somewhere, the Max Pacioretty trade doesn't happen, and Nick Suzuki is a two-time All-Star here in Las Vegas. I truly believe that. Nick Suzuki, watching him in juniors, seeing him a little bit in the AHL, I knew that Nick Suzuki was going to be a good player someday, but unfortunately, it just wasn't here in Vegas. So let's just get into it. All right, Nick Suzuki as a player, he is a guy that was drafted 13th overall. He was from the Ontario Hockey League. And when it comes to Nick Suzuki, not only did he come from a hockey family, Ryan Suzuki is also a player currently in the NHL, Ryan and Nick. But this is a guy in Nick Suzuki who, regardless if he was part of Team Canada on their junior team, he was part of the 2019 World Juniors for Team Canada. He was also one of the only 3 Owen Sound Attack members to participate in the 2015 World Under-17 Hockey Challenge. He also won gold with Team Canada in the World Under-17 Hockey Challenge. So Nick Suzuki, from almost day one, he had a lot of accolades. He did some good in his career. And just his 4 years playing in the OHL, you could tell that he was eventually going to become a good player. Nick Suzuki in year 1 had 20 goals, 38 points for 63 games played. Year 2, 65 games played, 45 goals, 96 points. Year 3, the year he got drafted by Vegas, 64 games, 42 goals, 100 assists. And year 4, his final year in juniors, 59 games played, 34 goals, and he had 94 points. So Nick Suzuki throughout his junior career was phenomenal. And he played a little bit for the Chicago Wolves. He played in the 2018 Calder Cup playoffs for the Chicago Wolves. But what happened once in that 2019 offseason is something that the Vegas Golden Knights are always going to be looked at and mocked for. So on September 18th, 2018, the Vegas Golden Knights trade Nick Suzuki, Thomas Tatar, and a second-round pick, which I think became Joseph Foligno, to the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for Max Pacioretty. This is a trade that back then looked interesting, but in hindsight now, 5 years later, has looked terrible for the Vegas Golden Knights. This is a trade that 5 years later should have never happened. Max Pacioretty not only is no longer a Vegas Golden Knight, but 4 years after this trade, they trade Max Pacioretty for future considerations, aka nothing. They traded Max Pacioretty to the Carolina Hurricanes for nothing. Meanwhile, they traded Nick Suzuki and Thomas Tatar for Max Pacioretty. So Max Pacioretty no longer here. Nick Suzuki in Montreal. So how has he done in his 4 seasons playing for Montreal? How has Nick Suzuki performed as a member of the Montreal Canadiens? Well, I'm glad you asked. So in 4 seasons in Montreal, Nick Suzuki not only is a 2-time All-Star, I kind of gave that away when I was briefly mentioning him earlier, but Nick Suzuki has not only become the captain of the Montreal Canadiens, but he has also been phenomenal in Montreal. In 263 games played as a Montreal Canadien, 66 goals, 185 points, and has received Calder votes. He has received Lady Byng votes, and he was on the all-rookie team the first year he was in Montreal. So year one, he had 13 goals, 41 points in 71 games. Year two, in 56 games, had 15 goals, 41 points, and helped the Montreal Canadiens beat the Vegas Golden Knights in the Western Conference Finals to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. So Nick Suzuki in his first 2 years had 82 points, a Stanley Cup Final appearance, and beat the Vegas Golden Knights in the playoffs to get there. I also want to mention that in the playoffs that year that the Montreal Canadiens got there, Nick Suzuki had 7 goals and 16 points in that playoff run that they got to the Stanley Cup Final. So Nick Suzuki already has 11 playoff goals in his career, and he is not even 24 years old. So year 3, that he finally becomes an All-Star, got to his first All-Star game here in Las Vegas. That was ironic too. In 82 games, had 21 goals, 61 points, and played all 82 games. And in year 4, he has played every game this season and has had 17 goals, 25 assists for 42 points and his second All-Star game appearance. So Nick Suzuki has been consistent. He played all 71 games in 2019-2020. He played all 56 games in 2020-2021. He played all 82 games in 2021-2022. So I just find it incredible that the fact that Nick Suzuki has not only been consistent, not only been reliable, but this is a Nick Suzuki that has been able to show the NHL that not only 24 years old, I am the future of the Montreal Canadiens. Him and Cole Caulfield, those are the future of the Montreal Canadiens. So as I'm talking about Nick Suzuki here on Vegas Hockey Hub, looking back at every first-round pick that the Vegas Golden Knights have had in franchise history, this will be the pick here. That it doesn't matter if it's next year, 5 years, 10 years from now. This will be the worst trade in Vegas Golden Knights history. Hands down, it will be regarded as the worst trade in franchise history because the Golden Knights recruited, scouted, and developed Nick Suzuki, and then they got rid of him after 1 year and not even having him play for the Vegas Golden Knights. So, that was Nick Suzuki during a preseason game for the Vegas Golden Knights, the only time he ever suited up in a jersey for the Vegas Golden Knights. And sure enough, like I said, he is the captain of the Montreal Canadiens. Now, this next one here, Erik Brannstrom. Now, he was taken 15th overall in that 2017 NHL draft, and there was some good potential around Erik Brannstrom. I remember that there was YouTubers, there were people that were watching hockey at the time that were high on Erik Brannstrom. They believed that Erik Brannstrom could eventually become a solid NHLer. Now, I remember the only negative towards him was at his height. He was like 5'10", 180 pounds. There was some, people were wondering if he would be able to blend into the NHL because of his size and his height. Well, how did he do in the Vegas Golden Knights system? How did he perform with Vegas? Well, funny enough, he actually never played a single game in the NHL for the Vegas Golden Knights. The Erik Brannstrom era only lasted 41 AHL games with the Vegas Golden Knights. The Chicago Wolves, he played 41 games, 7 goals, 28 points, and 36 penalty minutes. Why? Because he got traded during the 2019 NHL trade deadline. During the trade deadline, he was traded for Mark Stone. So him, Oscar Lindberg, and a second-round pick was dealt to the Ottawa Senators in exchange for superstar Mark Stone. Now, I will give credit to Eric Brandstrom. He was a AHL All-Star. He was part of the 2019 AHL All-Star game, but unfortunately, Eric Brandstrom has kind of been in limbo throughout his 6 seasons playing professional hockey. Eric Brandstrom has not been, in the NHL long term enough to really gain some traction throughout his career. He has been sent up and sent down between Belleville and Ottawa consistently. So just looking at his NHL career, all right, just focusing on what he has done as a NHLer, Eric Brandstrom, there's been flashes of potential. There have been flashes of him becoming a good player, but once again, he has not played enough games consistently to be in the NHL. I think the most he has played is around 55 games in a single season. He has not played a full 82. He hasn't played 70, 75. No, the most that he has been in the lineup was around 55 games. So Eric Brandstrom, in his 5-year career in the NHL, playing for the Ottawa Senators, 164 games, 3 goals, 37 points, and a negative 25 with the Ottawa Senators. Now, I'm not going to poke fun at his plus minus. Look, he's playing for the Ottawa Senators. It would be very hard for you to have a positive plus minus while playing in Ottawa. But what I want to focus on is that when it comes to Eric Brandstrom, he has not been really consistent, like I said. I mean, even when he's in the AHL, he really hasn't put up great numbers either. So in 2018, 2019, 4 points in 9 games for the Belleville Senators. 2019, 2020, 27 games, 23 points. And in 2021, he had 5 points in 4 games. And then this past season, 9 games, 3 points. So I think really the biggest issue that Eric Brandstrom has had, it's not the talent. The biggest problem that Eric Brandstrom has had is just that he has not been able to have consistent ice time in the NHL. With him going back and forth at 24 years old between the AHL and the NHL, I just believe that Eric Brandstrom is not going to be able to develop at a certain way because he is not in the lineup every single night. I also want to point out that Eric Brandstrom currently with the Ottawa Senators, and I have to give props to Cap Friendly for this. Man, if I didn't have Cap Friendly, I don't know what I would do. But, Cap Friendly, when you look at the depth chart for the Ottawa Senators, Eric Brandstrom has consistently been floating between the second line and the third line throughout his career. Regardless if it's Jacob Larson, Travis Hamonic, it doesn't matter if it's Nick Holden, the former Golden Knight turned Ottawa Senator, Jake Sanderson, the young fifth overall pick they drafted a few years after Brandstrom. The Ottawa Senators have a good amount of defensemen, and I think that's actually negatively affecting Eric Brandstrom. Is that because they have 8 or 9 defensemen they can have in their starting lineup, that he's not able to get the consistency that you would see in a normal player. So when you talk about Eric Brandstrom, it's unfortunate, but him getting traded for Mark Stone, in hindsight, might actually be the second best trade in Vegas Golden Knights history. The first one is Chandler Stevenson, traded for a 5th-round pick with the Vegas Golden Knights. That's the best trade in Golden Knights history. Chandler Stevenson being traded for a mid-level draft pick with the Washington Capitals. But the second one would definitely be Eric Brandstrom, Oscar Lindbergh, and a 2nd-round pick traded to the Ottawa Senators for Mark Stone. So, you know what? I hope eventually Eric Brandstrom can turn it around. I hope everyone here, nothing but success. But so far, he has just been in limbo, going back and forth between the AHL and the NHL. So that focused on the 2017 draft. And yes, I'm showing you the photos now. That was him in the preseason with the Vegas Golden Knights, playing for Belleville in the AHL, and now playing in the NHL for the Ottawa Senators. But, when we're talking about that, how about we mention a guy like this? Peyton Krebs was the next first-round pick, and that was in 2019. Now, Peyton Krebs got traded in the Jack Eichel trade. Alex Tuch, Peyton Krebs, and a first-round pick was dealt to the Buffalo Sabres for Jack Eichel. And when it comes to Peyton Krebs, he has now found a home at 22 years old on the middle six for the Buffalo Sabres. As a matter of fact, Peyton Krebs, ever since being dealt to the Buffalo Sabres, he has become nothing but a solid bottom six forward for the Buffalo Sabres. The first year in Buffalo, he had 48 games, 7 goals, 22 points. Year 2, 44 games, 7 goals, 14 points. So do I think Peyton Krebs at 22 years old has a possibility to become a great player someday? Yes, I do. But right now at this moment, only 105 games played, 14 goals, and 37 points. So we'll see how he does throughout his whole career. And these last two, I'm just going to briefly mention because these guys haven't played in the NHL yet. Brendan Brisson was their first round pick in 2020. They took him from the Chicago Steel, the USHL, eventually played for University of Michigan, and now is with the Henderson Silver Knights. And Brendan Brisson, throughout his career, has been a question mark because with the Henderson Silver Knights in the AHL, there are certain people who think he should be doing better than he is currently. There's some people who think Brendan Brisson should be in the NHL already at 21 years old. And then there's some that want him to stay in the minors for a little bit longer and eventually develop as a career. I mean, this is a guy who's played 47 professional games and has had 10 goals. So Brendan Brisson, their 2020 first-round pick, is still playing in Henderson, still in the AHL. Obviously, we're going to have to wait and see at the trade deadline if Brendan Brisson or if the guy I'm going to talk about here, Zach Dean, who is their 2021 first-round pick. It will be interesting to see at the NHL trade deadline if Brendan Brisson or if Zach Dean, if those guys are eventually flipped or eventually traded from the Vegas Golden Knights, because I could see that becoming a reality. But, until then, Zach Dean, who was their latest first-round pick, he is not in the AHL at this moment. He is still playing junior hockey at 20 years old. So Zach Dean playing in the KMJHL for the Gatineau Olympiques. You also have Brendan Brisson playing in the AHL for the Henderson Silver Knights, being on their middle six line for the Henderson Silver Knights. So this episode here talking about looking back at the first round picks in Vegas Golden Knights history. We went over Cody Glass, Erik Brannstrom, Nick Suzuki, Peyton Krebs, Brendan Brisson, and Zach Dean. So I want to know from all the people watching around the world, when it comes to the first round picks in Vegas Golden Knights history, have any of them been a surprise to you? Has there been any players out of the 6 that have been drafted? Has there been any of them that really have caught your attention in the NHL? Because Cody Glass doing what he's doing in Nashville now, I wish him the best. Nick Suzuki becoming a 2-time All-Star. He should have been doing that here. Erik Brannstrom in limbo in between the AHL and NHL out in Ottawa. Peyton Krebs on the bottom 6 in Buffalo, but is 22. He has time to develop. Brendan Brisson developing in the AHL as we speak. Maybe he'll get a call up to the NHL sometime down the line. And Zach Dean at 20 years old, still playing junior hockey in Quebec. It'll take time for him to eventually become an NHLer. So this was another episode of Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. And once again, this was looking back at every first-round pick in Vegas Golden Knights history. So until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. Continue watching hockey, go support junior hockey, and go Knights, go!